Hi, welcome to Florida's Frontier. Today we have mayor candidate for Jacksonville, Glenvin Owen. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
What's going on, everyone? First and foremost, you said my name perfect. I appreciate that. I get a lot of people that butcher the first name, but yes, my name is Glenvin Owen Jr. I am a mayoral candidate for Jacksonville, Florida. Extremely happy to be here and be on the podcast and to have this interview. But a little bit about me. I believe to understand someone and to really know who they are, you got to understand where they come from. And I'll try and do that within the briefest version. I know that we spoke earlier, and I think we both can talk, and just to condense that and get to the key points. But I believe to understand individually, you must know where they come from, and I don't mean where they reside, where born, but what makes an individual who they are. Their characteristics. What do they stand for? I believe that we're in a time right now where affiliations of party and left and right are kind of deteriorating and going out the window. I think we're getting back to the roots of what's important based on, who an individual is and what they represent, the foundation of themselves. And to me, that embodiment started with another individual that knowingly or unknowingly paved the way for me to, incorporate this DNA, I would say, of this, will not quit mindset and ability. And it was just for me to, at some point, take that on. To go a little bit more in depth with that, my family, we come from an immigrant family. And we came here from Jamaica. I was born in the United States, but I went through the turbulence of the hardship of what you have to go through and the barriers and the things you have to rise above during that duration of time. And, throughout that, my father was an individual that had to go the harder route. And he had to go the route to where, he wanted to take part and to be a part of a democracy that was going to instill and open up doors of opportunity for his kids. And he did that, So with courage and uncertainty, he went on this path and he continued his journey. I applaud him not for being perfect, but for being an individual that never steered off the direction that he felt was right within himself. So by him doing that, not knowing in my earlier years in my life, he was instilling something in me. It was just this won't quit strength of a demeanor and DNA and foundation that when hardship happens, what do you do? And I believe for a lot of individuals that want to take on the being of being a leader and being the answer, as in, if you're going to be a father, a husband, a leader at work, you're going to have to be a person that has answers. Well, in my opinion, how do you get answers? You have to go through hardship. If you never go through anything in your life, it's hard to be able to be a beacon or a voice for anyone else. And I believe that the more you ask and the more you ask on your plate, we forget that there's stages in between that. There's crushing stages in between that. And for me, as I went on to enter the business route of my life and I organically grew into sports and then transitioned, I seen how much this was relevant in regards of my day-to-day life and encounters of just growing within the business stages and developing and not looking at it in the selfish way of what I can do for myself, but understanding my success was a direct indication of how well my team did. I was a direct reflection of any individual that was an extension of me. So, I took this on, and later on, when I realized what it took to be the answer and to be a leader, these are the tangibles that I realized helped me carry through those turbulence moments because to be a leader, you have to make tough decisions. And we know we're in a time right now where tough decisions is needed. The youth is needed, and the voice behind what we feel is right and righteous needs to speak up. So yeah, that's a little bit of my stance in regards of, kind of who I am. But yeah, man,
Okay, so I heard you say earlier that people are formed through hardship. That's the case. That's the case with
yes.
basically everything, like kind of whenever you're forging a sword, the sword has to go through the fire. It has to be burned, right, in order for it to gain
Yeah.
function and shape. That's the
Yeah.
case with basically everything. With that
Yeah.
being said, why did you decide to run for mayor, and how has running for mayor so far impact your shape?
And I love that because I love the analogy that you used there. And it's like, when you take how do you what's one of the things that they do with gold, right? They dip it in that fire to
Yeah.
know if it's real or not, and it's, another thing where in my life I've never not jumped in the deep end when I wanted to take on something. And also in my life, I've never really been the guy that has taken pen to paper and say, you know what, I'm gonna do this, this is who I'm going to be. It's kind of happened within its own organic way. I've just ended up there. So to answer your question, I'm no politician. I'm no politician. I don't come from a household of politicians. I didn't go to school to be a politician. I feel as if I've embodied this a movement really to where it's aligned me to say, you know what? I want to go ahead and take part in this, not because I want to, but because I feel like I have to. And I'm a businessman at heart. That's what I've done the last 13 years. And I think God caused a little dysfunction in my life to redirect me and to say that, your purpose is also something so much greater than yourself at this stage. And it can be impacted through so many other individuals in their lives. And I was feeling very anointed. Really within some of my lower moments of my life, I felt the most anointing to do something that I felt I was called to do. So I really wasn't seeking it or seeking a political stance or seeking to run for the mayor. But I believe with my heart wanting to be a part of something that can really leave a big footprint, impact the youth, something refreshing, something that's different. And I believe that I can mobilize a different demographic of people to take part in something that they've never taken part of before. So,
Okay. Generally, whenever I'm looking at new politicians who I'm interested in, usually the first thing I look for is if they're religious. Are you a religious man?
100%, man. I grew up in a Baptist church, and I would say this at a young age. It was something my father instilled in me. Say, hey, you're gonna you're gonna go to church, and you're gonna walk within this faith, and you're a young kid, and this is what you did, and I do feel that church was very different back then. In regards of the individuals that took part in the congregation, you still have to find a good church, right? Just because
Yeah.
it's a church doesn't mean it's good. And we still have to understand that this is an embodiment of people and people aren't perfect. So, you have to find something that fits you. But my dad did that up until probably eighth, ninth grade to where he's like, hey, you can make your decision on what you want to do. And it's funny, I still have, I don't know if it's somewhere in my office. It's actually, I think, in my car, but my very first Bible in 2006 is where I said, today's the day that I asked Jesus Christ to come into my life and be a part of my life, and nothing can strip me from that. And I've had my journeys with him. I feel that life itself is the greatest teacher. And I know I wouldn't have gotten this far without him. And when I think of hardship in my life, like we were just talking about, I always remind myself that I faced so much and he's always found a way to get me through it. And it gives me confidence, when I'm leaning on things or I'm in a phase of something that I don't fully understand. And I guess that's when your faith kicks in. So, but yeah, definitely a religious man when it comes to that. And I think that my religious stance has grown tremendously within the last year or so, just with me intentionally wanting to make a greater impact on that as a whole. So
Okay. And I know your platform of running on mayor. I know like you're running for mayor, and the youth has a lot to do with it, from what I've
yeah,
gathered.
yeah.
What would you say is like the most, I guess you would say the most critical issue that kind of stands out the most whenever it comes to the youth in Jacksonville? Because right now in Jacksonville, I know that we have a lot of violence in general over there, and a lot of it actually stems from
Yeah.
teenagers. Do you have some
Yes,
sort of
yes,
plan or some sort of way? Because obviously you can lead a horse to the water, but you can't make him drink, right? But
yeah,
what's kind of like your plan to kind of mitigate a lot of violence whenever it comes to teenagers, even people in their early 20s like me?
yeah.
Um, so I guess you would say what is your plan to make a better future for the younger generation for Jacksonville?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. You know, the youth is so important to me because everyone says the youth is our future, right? The youth is the backbone to our democracy, right?
Yeah.
Think of it as this. Think of your 70-year-old self in the future, the 80-year-old self in the future. If you can only do something for yourself and you can't help influence, impact, or create something right as a duplication of what you once done within somebody else, and what are we really doing? All that means is basically what you've once done and transitioned into will just die off at some point, right? So for me, when you talk about the youth that's specifically, in these tougher moments in their life, and we're really probably talking about kids that are in tougher environments, kids that don't probably have both parents in the household, kids that are in subsidized housing, foster, they're in environments that harden them. You know, when you get hardened here, at your heart, right? Because you have to, and life has impacted you in a certain way where all you see is your environment. You don't understand what's outside of that. For me, I was once that troubled kid. I was once that kid that felt that feeling not too long ago. And it took individuals meeting me where I was, not condemning me or saying, hey, you're going to be good for nothing, or what a lot of the old school mindset would be is just to kind of write certain kids off just because. I believe when you can go about wanting change for the youth genuinely and wholeheartedly, and it impacts them their behavior will then change. It's not about lecturing them and, trying to just forcefully, tell them, hey, you're no good, you're not this, but you should be better because this, and that. Let's help them. Let's figure out how we can point them in a direction to where they can feel like this is something that's truly can better themselves. Let me give you an example. So something that I'm going to do in Jacksonville, and this is my first time speaking on this. It's going to be called the Micro Academy, and what this is basically an academy for the youth. And we're going to have a certain age group that can be involved with this. But this academy is going to allow you to take part with, call it like a big brother or an individual that is already within the business world, and these individuals are going to invest into the youth. So, for instance, let's say me and you met, you had aspirations to want to open up your own a business, whatever that entity is. And I'm a little bit tenured in my space. And I say, you know what? I want to give back to someone that checks off all the boxes and, hardworking. I feel like there is something there with this individual. So we're going to put you through the Micro Academy, right, for a certain duration. And at the end of that academy, we're going to invest in you. We're going to invest a certain dollar amount, whether it's $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, to help you start up your own business. And then throughout that startup of your business, you're going to be able to have this support system through the individual that helps start it up with you as you go through what now will be that hardship, turbulence, got to get through stage, because business isn't easy, especially when you start off, and you're going to have a mentor for you. And we're gathering different businesses within Jacksonville and different individuals that want to invest into this. And I believe this is a program that can be huge, whether it's in minority environments, or it could be, the kid that's in a private school, whoever it is. But we definitely want the outreach to be to the ones, in my opinion, the trouble kids, the kids that feel like nothing has ever really happened for them in a good way. And I think in my younger self, if someone presented something like this to me, it would have touched me in a way that, one, someone cares. Two, they want me to be involved in a part of something. And at the end of the day, a lot of kids they end up shying away or going off the path that we want them to, is because they don't have that in their life. They don't have a big brother. They don't have, both parents in the home. They don't have someone that's loving on them and making sure that they're good. And I think organically this can be a huge impact. Just one of the ways that we can start to grab a hold and corral and get the bandwidth that's needed for the youth that's troubled. And it's not going to be easy. Jacksonville has many areas that, need some help, and that stuff starts at the root of it. That's the best way and the easiest way to attack it. So hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, yeah. So I've never heard that before. So basically, what you're saying is kind of like having a godfather in a way. So
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. How would that work? Is it kind of like a no profit?
Yeah, so it's very simple. So it's a no profit. We're not in it to make a profit. We basically take local business owners within Jacksonville, you
Okay.
know, uh, who see value in giving back to the youth, right? So instead of taking that $1,000 or $2,000 investment and putting it here or wherever they may do, they're going to pour it into this nonprofit for a specific individual. We're going to enroll kids into this academy. Call it 15 to 25, right? And we're going to enroll them and say, hey, listen, I want to start up my own food truck. I want to start up my own, communication business or podcast or whatever it is, right? And we're going to basically teach them what I feel is lacking within our school system, what is going to be needed to go ahead and help them. Start you up an LLC, start you up your own account, start you up, different things that are going to basically equip you to be prepared on a business aspect. And then as long as you get through that academy, that godfather or that individual that is supporting you, that's helping invest within this program, they're going to go ahead and write you a check. It doesn't go to me, it doesn't go anyone else. It's going to be right straight to you for your business. You're going to get your certificate, and it's going to be your first start, getting into the business world. I know I would have loved that. It'd be like, man, I can get, 4 or 5 grand and I can start up something, or I can get 10 grand, what your idea is. And you can get through that academy, and through that duration, if they see value in it, they're going to invest in you. So,
Okay, yeah, okay, I understand now. Like you were touching on the school system, right? I can go ahead and tell you this. Everything I've learned throughout school, besides, English or math or whatever, right? I'm talking about simple math too. I haven't used a bit of it in my, real life, like after I graduated. I haven't used a
yeah,
single bit of it. And honestly, I
yeah,
look back now and I was like, man, this is so pointless. This never taught me how
right.
to get a job. This never taught me, any sort of
Hmm.
trades. And
There you go.
unless you go, I mean, if you go to CHS, right, where I live in Columbia County, Columbia High School, they have a welding program, right? They have things like that can help. But if you go to these private schools, though, I went to a private school my whole life. We didn't have that. Matter of
Mm.
fact, I played baseball throughout high school over there in middle school. We actually never played against any teams. We only just did practice because our school couldn't afford to go play other teams. Um,
Jeez.
so
Wow.
yeah, so that kind of gives you an idea of how many, how little programs we actually had at that school. So whenever luckily for me, I guess I just have common sense. I don't know, but I joined the army right out of graduating. But I look back now,
Love it.
is there anything we can actually do about the education in our cities whenever it comes down to that, as far as teaching children how to actually live life instead of giving them some calculus thing they'll never use?
Yeah, I mean, when I was in school, it was the same way. They put together this curriculum of, a body of, hey, English and math, and it's very basic. It doesn't have an intangible attachment to how do you sit down and speak to someone? How do you interview? How do you carry yourself? Our world works off of capitalism. How do you, start a business, or how do you read a statement, or how do you or your economical growth, or a political things that allow us to turn and to move forward, or some of the things that don't happen at all, like you say, or on the smallest scale, right? And I think that it starts with one, raising the standard within Florida as a whole. It is an absolute catastrophe when it comes to how much what when you look at what we allow when it comes to our teachers, and the lack of care when it comes to their pay, is going to be a direct reflection, right, on the level of excellence that we're going to accept. It's a circle effect, right? If we need to raise the standard and raise the bar of who we're allowing to teach our kids, and then what we are going to implement and teach our kids. If you're paying teachers, listen, my father was a teacher his whole life in Jamaica. When he came to the United States, my father went to the University of Florida, got his degree in political science, was top in his class. Bright individual. He's the political one, right? Not me, right? And then he went on to be a teacher of honors English. He's from Jamaica. He went and taught honors English, right? Hear me on this. I grew up in subsidized housing. I grew up in Section 8. The two doesn't make sense. The state of Florida, it has one of the highest surplus, in the country, has $15 billion in reserve, makes about $4 million an hour, right? We don't have a money problem, right? We have a inadequate ability on how we're deploying that money and to who it should be deployed to.
It's a
So I
leadership
first feel
problem.
that it's a leadership problem. We have all the intangibles, right? When it comes to, like, man, I can't make this guy 6'8". I can't make his wingspan this long. I can't adopt how fast he runs, but I can give him a bad coach, a bad system, bad plays, right? I can do all these things that will cripple him. It will go directly against the upward trajectory of the potential of someone if that happens, and I feel like that's what's going on here, and it's a passionate thing, because it's like we are not equipping our kids to the best of our ability to truly flourish outside of the classroom, to truly flourish outside of looking at a sheet of paper and doing a test. This piece of paper and this test isn't going to multiply or be adequate enough for what's going to happen when you go out in the real world. I promise you that. I promise you that. Because when you sit in front of someone else that tests just as good as you, that looks decently good as you on paper, right? And you guys are very much the same, or women, what now is the deciding factor? Right? What now is going to separate you? Right? If you have experience and you've gone through a program, right, on a business side of things, and you got a certificate, that will help. If you've gone through, some variation or simulation of real life experience throughout that duration, that will help, right? You need something more than just the basics. And we have to start investing and pouring into our teachers so we can raise the bar of excellence, especially in Jacksonville. Especially in Jacksonville. It is sad what we accept here when it comes to many things, but especially our teachers and what it is. And, me and you both know this. This is why one of the reasons why I'm big on Fishback and some of his policies. And I know on a state level, for me here in Jacksonville, the largest city land wise in Florida, I have the full embodiment of success. And I know with someone like that, I can be like, hey, teachers' pays are going to go up. immediately, full stop. I know it's going to happen, so building that relationship and having that there in sequence is what we need. But yeah, I mean, it's completely horrible. So,
Yeah, so my mom actually, she was a teacher while I was growing up. And Fishback stated, and while she was
mm,
a teacher, she barely got paid anything. She got, paycheck to paycheck essentially whenever it came to living.
right,
Um,
right.
Fishback stated, I believe it was 2 weeks ago in Mariana, he said that he was going to give all teachers a 25% raise throughout the
Minimum.
entire state of Florida. I am all for that. Now, let's just go ahead and break the ice right here. Let's just go ahead and break the
Let's
ice,
do
ruffle some feathers. Do you have any money
it.
from APAC?
Come on, man. Never. Not happening. It's never happening. Listen, uh, we're in such a position to where I've appreciated what's come before me, and I'm appreciating where we are now. It's America first. All of it, everything about it. That's what it is. That's what it's about. We're the best in everything and in all aspects. People, and trust me, coming from an immigrant family, people scratch and claw and wish they can do almost anything just to be a part of it. Right? Is anything perfect? No, but the foundation of what we represent, the foundation of the ability for the American people, for the citizens of Jacksonville, for what you can do in our great state of Florida, it's there. It's at your fingertips in 2026, right? And your perspective is going to drive your reality on what you feel like you can accomplish and do with that. But definitely not, man. It's something that I'm embodied to say, and I believe it full heartedly, and we know it's something that we're passionate about as a whole. So
Yeah. As you said earlier, this is America first, right? This is no
yes,
longer a party versus party issue. This is America versus Israel first now, whenever it comes to our politics in the U.S. Just the city of Tallahassee alone has $350 million in Israeli bonds. That's just Tallahassee alone.
mm,
350 million. Now,
yeah,
I think it's Palm Beach. I could be wrong on that, but
mm-hmm,
it's $5
mm-hmm,
billion overall. In general, over the entire state, it's billions and billions of dollars in Israeli bonds in Israel right now. If we
correct.
divest all that money, we could put that back into Floridians' pockets right there. That money can be used to pay your college funding. That money can be used to start up a business, give teachers that 25% pay.
Yes.
You running for mayor in Jacksonville, I don't know too much about your political opponents. What's really unique is actually you're running as an independent. You don't see that a lot. And especially, I was looking yesterday. I was
Yeah.
looking yesterday on your Instagram, and then it says Fishback actually follows you on Instagram, and I was like, oh wow, that's
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah.
So
That's
it's
my boy.
really good. What would you say to those people who say it's really hard to win as an independent? Because
Hmm.
historically speaking, independents don't win nearly as much as a Republican or Democrat.
For sure. Yeah, no, that's a great question. It's funny, yeah, me and Fab follow each other. It's we'll touch a little bit more on that as a whole, but yeah, for me running as an independent, and it was important to me because I believe that we see clearly what's going on in 3D. You know, Unfortunately, when you say Republican, as soon as you say that, there's a group of people that are going to put you off and think of you as one way, regardless. They won't even give you an opportunity to show you who you are, to show yourself, the character of who you are, what you represent, or hear yourself. And then the same thing, if, as for Democrats, right? It's funny, I attended a Fishback event not because I was like jumping out of my seat to, or, because everyone around me was like, hey, you just got to go see this guy. I attended because there was something different, right? And I knew that we probably don't agree on everything. This was my initial assumption, but I wanted to position myself there to try and grab something from him and not just read a headline, but understand the body of work, what he really represents. Headlines just catch, that's what they're for. They're just to catch the person that's just like sees something, believes it right away, and runs with it. That's probably 80% of people, maybe more. No one truly takes the time, like myself and you, to really understand the sequence of events, what's said, what's transpiring. And that's what I wanted to do, you know. But I believe that we're no longer in this in the era or the stage to where, you know, you have to be affiliated left or right. I believe that there is a great deal of individuals being victim, just taking on the stage of being puppets to these like they're taking on the affiliation of of that platform more than people. You know, at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. You know, it's about the being the righteous of the people as a whole, you know, and that's what I wanted to eliminate. I feel as if that the greatest, the highest volume of voter is not your, especially in Jacksonville, is not going to be Democrats or Republicans. It's going to be the undecided. It's going to be the youth. It's going to be the minorities. And it's going to be the people that feel like their voice, their words, it falls on deaf ears and their contribution doesn't really have a contribution to anything whatsoever. That is the greatest vote. Those are the individuals that I'm looking for as a leader. If I cannot, if I cannot surface these individuals, if I cannot surface these individuals, influence them, I can't, you know, help bring out the very best version of themselves, then I don't deserve to win this election. We should just continue to have the 65, 70-year-old person, you know, do the same things, you know, accomplish very little to nothing in the next 4 years, have no sense of urgency, still continue to operate at a low level when it comes to, you know, what we accept. And it's not excellence. And it's not that. I think surfacing the youth, surfacing minorities, surfacing the undecided is the key thing. And that's why I'm running independent. I want to focus on what's right for people and policies, not for, you know, a particular party and do whatever that party does just because, you know, that's not it. So.
Okay, so I got two questions. One of them being,
Yes.
I know you said that you went and met with Fishback at an event he did
Yeah.
to try and grab something from him. Is that because you think he's going to win governor? And have you met with anybody else?
So when I initially met with Fishback, I knew he was second in the polls. I knew he was second in the polls, but from what I was seeing based on headlines, he had a long shot. And then I seen a lot of stuff, right? You know, he has racist tendencies. He's radical. He's, you know, surfacing, you know, the white supremacists and nationalists and all these things, right? And I just didn't want to lean to that. See what happens, you know, when you implement verbiage and you include it in certain, you know, dynamics of what you're saying that can trigger someone, they just run with that. They don't look at the body of things still, you know, and that's the older school mentality. I think one of the reasons why there's so much youth being involved at Fishback's events is because they're looking at the full picture. You know, they're looking at the full picture of everything and he's resonating with them. So it was actually the direct opposite. I didn't think I would resonate with Fishback. I didn't think that what he stood for or the character or who he was may or may not resonate with me. It may or may not equal out to what I believe in. It was a coin flip. And, you know, throughout that, I was wrong. And, you know, I could say that I think we were growing a relationship. And with him, right, being second in this race, outside of our good friend Byron, Donalds, right? One of them are going to be our governor. You know, one of them is going to be our governor, you know. So at the end of the day, you know, for me, it was like, listen, I want to formulate a relationship. I want to make sure that I have resources and ability to someone that's going to be in the lead of our great state, Florida. And, you know, that was a big piece of it, too. So, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I know that earlier you touched on teachers not getting paid a lot, right? This is going to link back to what we were just
Yes.
talking about. But
Yeah.
so as of right now, I'm sure you're probably familiar with Fishback's policy about actually raising the minimum tuition, I believe is what it is, for foreign exchange students for $1 million.
Yeah.
Um, it gives Floridians, it gives people like me and you a chance to actually get into our colleges, right?
Yeah.
Without having to compete with foreign exchange students, right? So I know
Hmm.
earlier you said that a lot of people actually attack Fishback for being like an extremist or whatever, right? I actually don't
Yeah.
think he's an extremist. I say he's pretty moderate overall. I mean,
Okay.
I look at things like that. You know,
Yeah.
why do we have other people from other countries who is taking our positions from our students, from our children, from our youth? Why are we
Yeah.
local Floridians, born and raised, having to compete with people from China? It makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
But anyways,
Right.
going back to that, linking back to the whole, divesting the money from Israel and the state, that is where our teachers would be getting paid from with that raise. Is there
Yes.
anything you can do as mayor in a city to actually increase the wages for teachers on a city level? I have no idea about how that works.
Yeah, I've researched it and looked into it a little bit. There's a lot of components of that where my hands are tied. It starts at the state level, essentially. So it gives me a great deal of confidence knowing once Fishback takes part and he's the next governor for us here in Florida, I can stand on and deliver what's needed when it comes to our teachers and them getting an increase in pay and other public servants and people that are pouring into the youth and doing these types of work for us that are also overworked and underpaid. But yeah, it's going to be having that relationship at that state level that is in sequence with what we believe. And right now we have a mayor that she's a Democrat. I don't think she's a bad woman. I have no idea who she was or what she represented. I believe she was like a news anchor before that. Doesn't really have a political background, but I believe when you're in a city that has Duval County has 1 million+ people in it. Okay, just think of that, 1 million people. Probably not even 10% are voting or participating. If you can't influence people to take part, right, in all aspects, I give Donald Trump this credit. When Donald Trump ran his first term and even his second term, right, he was able to do one of two things. He surfaced individuals, whether they were 90 years old or whether you were 16 years old, he got you excited, he got you out of your seat, and he got you ready to be, involved and contribute in some way. Wrong or right?
No, you're very right on that. I mean,
Yeah.
back in 2024, I voted for Trump.
Yeah. Yeah.
During the time, I kind of have a different view on things now.
Right.
But during the time, though, it was, you have to vote for the lesser of the two evils. And that's not saying Donald Trump is evil per se, right? But Donald Trump hasn't actually upkept a lot of his promises. I remember like a while back whenever he's running for, 2024, he was saying, oh, mark my words, within 24 hours before I actually hold office, I'll have the war in Ukraine and Russia, put to a stop. That never
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
He campaigned
Yeah.
against a war with Iran, saying he
Right.
would not go to war with
Mhm.
Iran. What happened?
Now
We
here
went
we
to war
are.
with
Yeah.
Iran. He also
Yeah.
campaigned for mass deportations, and then he put that to a halt essentially. Whenever that one ICE officer shot that one chick who tried to run him over, he put that to a halt. There's so many things that Donald Trump actually hasn't kept promises on, but that's a
Yeah.
topic for a different day.
For sure. For sure. But
Uh,
as a whole, there's very few individuals that have been able to surface both, right? Some can cater to a certain group and demographic of people, but a lot can be well rounded. Listen, I've been black 31 years of my life. He had every black person I know ready to vote for him. He had every Hispanic person I know ready to vote for him. And he had every white person of all types ready to vote for him. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And when you can do that, it makes you bulletproof. You know what I mean? It's hard to, lose a campaign in that aspect, So I think outside of Trump, maybe Obama was the only one closer to be able to do that. When you talk about people that never voted before, and he surfaced them and he gave them a reason to want to take part, these individuals have done that, So I know it's a big analogy to uphold, but if you can't do that in one of the largest cities, right, land wise, with so much development, so much growth, we're well underperformed based on we're operating out of reserve, right? Not and we're not operating within our full potential. And we need someone that is going to impact individuals within this city to want to be a part of it, to want to contribute. And I think I should only win if I can do that. And I believe that what's the continuation, and whoever is running, which I don't know who, probably 60, 70-year-old people that feel like they know a great trajectory here of what to take place, and they know how to reach you and the youth, and they don't. They just don't. And it's not getting done, and it's not happening, and there's no sense of urgency. I was talking with a congressman yesterday at Fishback's event, and we were sitting front row at the event, and he's like, man, how long is that stadium going to take over in Jacksonville? Like, I hope they don't move the Jags out. And it's like, it takes them 2 3 years just to do a roof, just to do a roof. I said, I tell you what, I said, if Donald Trump was behind the project, it would have been done yesterday, right? And we go back to the ice skating rink that he had, right, in New York, and he's like, oh, I can get this done in 2 3 months. And people just don't have the sense of urgency, and it takes the right operator in the driver's seat to say, when he comes around, he's like, oh, I need to get stuff done. Things need to get done now, right? And that's a different fire that needs to be lit, and this city needs it bad, bad. We're like a Lamborghini just sitting in idle, just the engine's just on. We're not going anywhere though, and we need someone that's going to say, okay, this is how you put your hands on the wheel. We're gonna, put it in gear. We're gonna take off. And anything that doesn't fall in line with this level of excellence, we have a zero tolerance for, and it won't happen. So, but yeah, I mean, that's how I feel.
How can we make our streets safer in Jacksonville? As far as homeless goes, you're whenever I drive through Jacksonville, I see homeless. I'm not sure where it ranks though, as far as city wise in the state of Florida or even in the country, as far as how bad
It's
the
bad.
homeless is. It's bad. Is there much we can do about that?
It's
Like,
bad.
can we possibly get them out of Jacksonville? Can we help them out? What like did you like? Do you really have a plan for that?
Yeah, so I've been at a few different shelters and programs within Jacksonville. I was over at City Rescue downtown, which is the heart of the homeless. Uh, our current mayor and a lot of individuals foot in that facility, which it's only 3 to 4 minutes away from City Hall, where their office is. It's a complete disaster. It's a complete disrespect to what's going on in Jacksonville by not showing up face first and meeting all individuals where they are. We have one of the greatest issues when it comes to homeless within the state of Florida, I believe, right here. Just taking over our downtown, and it is eating away at small businesses. It's eating away at the ability for this to be more vibrant, more attractive to youth, for people to it's impeding on our ability to be successful, in many aspects. So when I walked into these shelters, I personally went to City Rescue downtown, City Rescue on McDuff. I went to Trinity Rescue right next to it, and I passed out food and bought pizzas and spoke with the staff and the individuals there. And every night, these facilities are at capacity. So you're talking 100 plus people. At City Rescue, you're talking about between 40 to 50 individuals are DOC, meaning they're still Department of Corrections, kind of like a halfway house. They're winding down out of their time and getting back into the functionality of the real world. And then you have the rest that are, in programs. They break up the programs into three levels, and you have like the overcomers and different levels to where they put you in. They watch you and help you to the best of their ability on getting you back out into the world. And I think that we're doing a poor job of it right now. The current leadership, they opened up a housing unit that fit like 11 people or 12 people. One of the workers at City Rescue walked me over and said, "This is the only thing that I've seen that has happened since the tenure of the current leadership right now in Jacksonville." He's like 10, 12 people. He's like, I can go make a few phone calls and find 10, 12 people to go stay the night somewhere. Like, what are we doing? Mind you, we have $200 million of wasteful spending here in Jacksonville. Second, I believe, in the state. $200 million. The current mayor was ridiculed, right, and was rightfully so attacked about why there was a hologram of herself in the airport that cost a great seam of money, when we have dire needs that need to be attended to first. We don't need to see a hologram of yourself walking around. We need urgency. We need change, right? We don't need applause. We need change. We need things to happen. We need to know when you walk around, people expect things to happen. If they didn't happen already, they're about to happen, right? That's what we need. So I think one of the things that, and this is another breaking announcement, I'm giving you some gems here, man. So I'm going to be starting and opening up with it's a company that's called Salt Outreach. Okay. And we are in the beginning stages, which won't take too long, but it's in the beginning stages of us bringing this to Jacksonville. They're based out of Orlando right now. And we're basically going to think of it like RVs or campers that are stripped down. They build showers in them. They build little working stations to where the homeless can have a place to shower every day. They have a place to be groomed every day, right? And they have a place to be directed, if not there, to any medication, anything that they may need, in the direct ability to speak with individuals that can help them with that, because that's the key thing, right? A lot of them take on these the mental aspects that help that doesn't help them when it comes to being able to rehabilitate, right? And we need to find a way to go ahead and expedite that process and deploy it better. And we're basically going to set up, several different stations within Jacksonville. And they're mobile. I don't have to build, these are quick things that can be done right now. This isn't like, oh, it's going to take 4 years to build a house. No, we're going to drive it over. It's going to be there. It's going to take no time to put a shower in there, stations, so they can go interview at a job and look the part. They can be clean. They don't smell. Like, these are the things that they need, and they can have direction through the individuals within this program on how to get other help that they need. And we're going to have as many stations as we possibly can. And that's another thing that I'm doing in Jacksonville right now within our homeless. But the bigger question is how do we stop it from increasing? How do we stop that number to of that number? And that's going to be affordability whenever you're ready to talk about that.
Okay, yeah, let's get into affordability. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll open up with this on affordability. I spoke to you about this last time I saw you. Right now, Jacksonville is trying to dump, the recreational water into Swanee River to allow more people to move into Jacksonville, make more room. I think me and you can both agree that that would actually raise the cost of rent. That would raise the cost of real estate in general, of just the cost of living, because there's a lot more people in Duval County. It would make the demand for supplies go way
Yes.
up. I believe it was a 30% population increase. I'm not sure how much people that is going to be, but it was a 30%
Yeah.
population increase.
Yeah.
Uh, do you plan on trying to now? I'm not sure when that's going to go by. I'm not sure if it already went by or if that's like something that's coming later on this year. I know you're running for office for 2027, so I imagine that will be out of your hands by that time. But what's kind of your stance on that?
Yeah, if I had a right now stance and had to make a tough decision, I would say absolutely not. I would say we're absolutely not prepared to take on such an increase at once. It would be crippling to the individuals that are already here. It would be crippling to the issues that we already have with our homeless. It would probably fast track many households and individuals to being homeless, right? And this isn't you taking, let's say, just some immigrants and just dumping them into Jacksonville. They lack resources. They lack, anything that's going to give them the right now effect to be like, hey, I'm going to go take a home from you. Hey, I'm going to go apply for this rental place and get in here. It's not that degree. If you open it up and there's a 30% increase to people that are going now be able to say, hey, that same apartment you were trying to get, yeah, I just applied for it too. Now there's 2 people, 3 people, 5 people. Now there's a year waiting list. Now it's 2 years waiting list. Now there's, hey, we can't get in anywhere. So I would say absolutely not. I would say we need to handle issues that are dire need and urgent right this second. And if there's anything I can do to suppress that and keep that from happening, that's what I would do. So I would say if the timing and the setup was different, and we were in a position to where that can be deployed in increments. And, I'm not opposed to that. I'm not saying I don't want anybody to come to Jacksonville. What I'm saying is that we're not operating at the standard that we need to. We have too many issues. Our homeless is already a crippling matter almost now for our business, for our all the beautiful areas within Jacksonville, our downtown, and we need to handle that. It needs to be something that needs to be remedied, or a recipe that comes to the table first, and that process needs to start. Right now in Jacksonville, we're about 50,000 homes behind. This is where me and Fishback, we talked for about 15 minutes at one of his events. And I was interviewed afterwards by the New York Times by Michelle Goldberg. And she's like, you don't think this guy's racist? You think this guy actually has a proper stance on wanting to help people? I said,
There's
well, I've been black a long time, and I think I know what real racism looks like.
yeah.
Like, yeah, am I saying that he doesn't make remarks that are probably trolling and call Byron Donalds Byron, or he holds the Glock sideways? Get the hell over yourself. You know what I mean? Like, yes, he's trolling you. Yes, it's like being in a competitive, event. If you're playing baseball and you're going up the bat, and I'm like, man, I can't wait for your ass to strike out because of X, Y, and Z. Like, come on, man, get some tough skin. Right? When people take that and they embody it as he's the next coming of a slave master or something, and he's just racist human being to his core, it's absolutely laughable. And they expect me to say yes. It's like, come on, guys. You know what I mean? Like, what are we doing? But it breeds and it feeds off that assumption. But yeah, we're behind tremendously. And what I was telling her is that we're behind tremendously. 50,000 homes in Jacksonville. That's just subsidized, stabilized income housing for individuals that it correlates with their pay so that they can afford to live. We don't even have anywhere to put them.
No.
So how are we going to handle 30% increase of other people, right? It does not make sense, and it's not beneficial. You have to do things in a manner that is going to add value and add to your cities, not take away from them and only, fuel the very thing that now. So
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. You said 50,000 homes, but Duval County itself, correct me if I'm wrong on this. There is actually no like rural areas in Jacksonville. It's all city, right? Jacksonville extends to the border of the county itself,
Georgia.
correct?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so meaning like there's basically no room to actually build any more homes.
I mean, yeah, it's getting tight. I mean, anywhere they can find a patch of dirt, they want to put a home there, huh? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and then the areas that are the areas that are needing refreshing and needing something or someone to come in there and make it more vibrant and make it better, they don't nothing's happening there. You're talking about the north side, the west side of Jacksonville, you're talking about the more troubled areas of Jacksonville, that if you added value to it, if you invested into it, you can get a different result. If you continue doing the same thing, this isn't rocket science here, but when you're already 50,000 homes behind and you got the head rep that is in charge of basically developing these homes to meet, he's like, we're so far behind, I don't know how we're going to even catch up. I don't know how we're going to do this. I think last year they only did 900 or just under 1,000 homes. You know what I mean? But mind you, we got $200 million in wasteful spending. We got holograms of people going up, but we don't got people. People don't have places to live. It's almost an epidemic within our city. And then we have a problem with excuse me, the individuals that are in subsidized housing that are making it like it's a generational run here. you know
Right.
like father like it's like it's passing the baton or some type of trophy, like, yeah, like this is awesome, and that starts at the root. I mean, that might be a different conversation, but I believe, and I have to verify on this, that when I become mayor, if I could put a sunset expiration on an individual and their family to take part within a subsidized housing development for only a certain period of time, to where you have to get your stuff in order. I come from subsidized housing, right? I didn't allow it to victimize me or shackle me into the things that I wanted to do within my life. I rose above it and I got through it, right? But you need to use it for exactly what it is. It's an assistance. It's not something you need to make who you are. It's not your end all be all. We have a 2 to 3 year wait for these places. You can't, no one can move in there, right? It's another reason why we're stacking up. But if people are actually developing and using it as assistance and wanting to move into better neighborhoods and grow from that, we wouldn't have this issue. But if you put an expiration date on it and they're like, hey, I got to get out no matter what, it may just force the very end. You need to go ahead and start working on yourself, getting things figured out, or you can't be here anymore. We need to bring the next family that may actually need it and not abuse it. So that's something I would implement.
Right. So I don't think there's any turning back now, right? I would say from what I've seen, Jacksonville is overdeveloped. I believe so. It's been the like I said, previously, the city itself is extended all the way down to the actual borders of the county itself. Um, but I think it's overdeveloped. I'm going fishing in Jacksonville tomorrow. I love doing fishing over there. I think it's
There you
actually a
go.
very pretty area. I used to, I
It is.
fish over there occasionally. Um, I don't know. I guess you would say I'm a preservist, right? I like to preserve the
I,
environment around me, and it also helps with affordability as well, right? That whenever you begin overdeveloping and you have everybody move in a single area, that's going to make the demand for example, gas. That's one. It will go up. For two, eggs,
correct.
groceries, electricity, rent, real estate. Like I said
Yeah.
previously, is there any way, like, I guess you said my question to you is, do you plan on stopping overdeveloping and like I guess you would say focusing on other issues instead of trying to cram more buildings and
Yeah.
it's good to have
Yeah. We don't,
it's good to have small businesses. It's great to
we,
have.
we,
Go ahead.
Yes, if we need to develop something, and you touched on it already, we need to develop and start up a business, a small business, something that can have economical growth to families, to the community, and drive stability to it. We don't need to just drop. a house in the middle of nowhere of
Right.
nothing just because there's open space there. Like you said, to preserve certain areas and certain things for a right deployment, the correct deployment of what it could be used for is what we need to do. That's a key piece of what we need to do. We're just having any type of developer just develop and open up anything anywhere. We're misrepresenting the current setup that we have now. That's why I would put an expiration, a sunset on subsidized housing for families, right? And it's taken away from people that need it. And we need to hold ourselves at a higher standard of what we already got. You know what I mean?
Right.
What we already got, what we're already using. That's how what I truly feel about it. We let alone buying a house, people can't even get into the ability to afford to rent a place.
No.
And this is what we talked about. If you're going to go right now and apply to go rent for a place, the average is between $1,400 to $1,500 a month, right? You need to
Yeah.
make 3 times that just to get in. So if you're by yourself, good luck. Most
Yeah.
people have to get roommates, or hopefully they're married, have a girlfriend, whatever the case may be, their spouse with them, so
Hopefully it's
that
a
they can
happily
even
marriage.
qualify. And then if your credits Right, it's a happy marriage, right? And then if your credit's not there, then some places need you to make 5 times the rent, and then you're required to put an even bigger deposit down. So then you're talking, 2 to 4 grand just to go and rent somewhere, to go live somewhere. This is another reason, why we're seeing more people sleeping in their cars, sleeping on the streets, sleeping in shelters, not having anywhere to go. And we're talking about bringing 30% more increase into the city. We're talking about just dropping more homes that people can't already afford, on a rental standpoint. No, we need to be pouring money into policies and different things that are going to be able to help people, right? That need it and that bring stability. We talked about this. Fishbacks talked about um, using the money that was sent out or that's used from Israel to help with a down payment assistance for homes,
Right.
$10,000,
Yep.
right? We talked about me and Fishback. We talked about as he was developing an idea to do a down payment assistance for renters, if you meet the criteria, and not just give you the money, but use it as a loan. So, for instance, you've lived in Jacksonville for a year, you've worked at your job for a year, you work 40 hours a week. So basically, you're showing stability within the city. You don't just move here and get it, but you show stability. We give you a loan based on future earnings at your current job to help you get into that apartment. Because it's hard for a lot of people to save up $2,000 to $4,000, $5,000. But let's say you're in a bad relationship. Let's say that you're doing all the right things, but you just need a little bit of help. You need a little bit of assistance. Let's say that you're a part of the program now to where hey, I can't be in the subsidized housing anymore. Glenn's got this sunset. I need to transition out, and I want to transition out, but I need a little bit of help. Here's this down payment assistance for the citizens of Jacksonville that have stability, that want to better themselves. The problem is that there's too many times that we don't reward individuals that are doing well for themselves and that are doing the right things and that have businesses and that are, rising above and not taking advantage, exploiting, or abusing a system that gives out money based on your hard work. It almost works against yourself in the sense of, I might as well just work less and do less. I get more. Right. So we need to start championing other ideas to build a circle effect of saying, hey, you want to get out of that some housing? You worked real hard. You were staying at your parents' place. And now, you want to transition to a different environment. I'm going to go ahead and help you. And then, people always talk about, well, where's the money going to come from for this? Where's the money going to come from for that? We have the money. We're just using it wrong. We're just using it wrong. The first thing that comes to my mind as a businessman when I would walk into franchise dealerships and institutions, or within myself, we look for wasteful spending, and that might not have been the exact terminology of it, but we look for areas to where we can take a store that's losing money. And we can either zero it out or make a profit, or we can take a store that's making a profit, right, and increase that profit without turning one vehicle, without turning one aspect of labor in the shop, whatever it is. Before we even sell anything, we want to raise our profit of our bottom line because we know there's wasteful spending, we know there's areas that need to be cut, and that's what we need to do. You know what I mean? So it's not about if we have the money; it's that we need to take the money that we're using incorrectly, and we need to deploy it for areas that are going to be actual beneficial for the youth and individuals that need it. So
Yeah, what I would say to that is a lot of people, people are sheep now. And I say that in the sense of now, like Donald Trump, for example, right? Whoever he endorses, especially your older generation, they're just going to follow and just, kind of vote for
they're
who.
running with it.
Yeah,
Yeah, of
it's
course.
they
People are
don't
followers.
bother
They don't. Yeah.
they don't bother looking into policy. They don't bother looking into what he believes, right? I can go ahead and tell you this: Byron Donalds, he's not going to help with affordability in Jacksonville. Matter of fact, we already
Yeah.
know that it's actually
Yeah.
going to raise the electric bill in Jacksonville with AI database centers being built on
Yeah.
real estate in Florida. Right? He wants to buy up that real estate, put AI database centers there just to make your Chat GPT work like a millisecond faster, and it's going to raise everybody's electric bill by an average of $16 more a month. And so,
Yeah.
also with that being said, right, and especially if it's going to be put in Jacksonville too. I mean, I don't know. I look at Jacksonville and it's a really big city, right? It's a city of business. It's a
It's
city
a
where
very big city.
it's a city
Yes.
where people go to make money. That's what it is.
No.
I hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully I'm wrong, but I see him trying to put an AI database center in Jacksonville. That's going to take up real estate. It's going to take up property. It's going to rise electric bill costs. It's going to rise real estate costs. It's why? Matter of fact, the way I look at it is even with all these little, stores like, I don't know, like James Fishback says Five Below. What the heck's a Five Below? All that stuff that Five Below sells for $5 and below, that all comes from China. That's not supporting American manufacturing or American businesses. That's not supporting American manufacturing, right? We need to put family
Yeah.
local owned business in those kinds of spots right there. Uh,
Correct.
we need to give our locals opportunity. We need to give them a life, right? We don't. We matter if it hurts us not just in a policy or economic stance. It also hurts us in a pay stance as well, right? Five Below, right? Paying employees
Yeah.
minimum wage while some billion-dollar CEO is profiting off of all of it, right? I'm all for capitalism. I really am. But I have a problem
Yes.
whenever they use our foreign opponents like China to their advantage in our country. Um,
Right.
so, for example, we have a farmers market where I'm at locally, fifth generation farms. I like to go over there a lot. I'll buy ribs, I'll buy hamburger meat, right? All that stuff is locally grown. All that stuff is locally cut, and they do it right there, right?
Hmm.
That is supporting your local community. Whenever you go to Walmart,
Yeah.
whenever you go to Walmart and you buy all this meat coming from Walmart, right? Now a lot of it's like genetically engineered and stuff like that. That's not supporting. That doesn't help your community. It doesn't help your community. It's very
Right.
harmful, actually. You're taking away business from the locals.
Yeah.
So, do you plan on? Do you plan on? I don't know what you can do for mayor for this, but have you thought about having more family-owned businesses actually take over
Yeah.
abandoned buildings? Because there's a lot of buildings in cities, especially big cities like Jacksonville, where the buildings are just abandoned. They're not occupied. There's no business in there right this second. It's just up for lease, but the
Yeah.
lease the lease is so high pay wise where people just can't afford it.
Yep.
Unfortunately, that I think that's the problem. I think that's where a
Yep.
lot of the problem lies whenever it comes to locally owned businesses is the lease in the cities are just
Yeah.
so freaking expensive and people just can't afford it.
Well, I've had the benefit, and my goal is to touch, if not all, small businesses in Duval County and shake the owner's hand, look them in the eyes, and let them know that you have support. You have an individual that's going to be behind you, that's going to help you with your upwards trajectory of success and bring stability, because I know how difficult it can be to where you're almost operating on a day-to-day basis hoping you can open the doors, and, be at service to the community. And I think we have a big issue of, support. Where are the grants going? Where are the money that are being used, right? Like we talked about, they're just, pouring money into another construction company to build this or to do that, things that are not fueling and adding stability to the growth within, our cities and what we need. So I think it just needs a realignment, of what's truly important. What's unfortunate is that we now are putting the dollar or making a dollar over the American people. If it makes more money, right, than helping out your family or someone else's family to live a little bit better, to sleep easier at night, to know you have this support, they're going to go take that dollar. They don't care where it comes from or how they get it, right? And when you're a sports guy, I know you play baseball and you can probably relate to this. When I was playing basketball and playing at some of the highest levels and playing with guys that were like, they championed this sport as in like they would almost die for it. It meant that much to them. It was so much more than just swinging a bat. It was so much more than just dunking a basketball or scoring a point. It wasn't just a hobby or something they just did, right? And I believe if you're not willing to do something as if it's as important as your next breath or to die for it, you can always be bought. You can always be bought, and that's the thing that we're having right now with the wasteful spending, with the current leadership, with the current improper alignment of what's important within our cities, because we're not thinking about people. We're thinking about affiliation. We're thinking about agendas, and we're being puppets to what are surrounding us outside of what we need to care about. And that's the core of our city and the people that make the city the actual city that it is. That's it. That's it. We got wrong leadership, man. We got it. It's bad. It's bad. So
Yeah, and you dabbed into sports right there. Speaking of sports, I was going to dabble into this earlier, just got sidetracked. I always get sidetracked. But like in our county, in Columbia County, for example, in the city, I'm not sure if this is a city issue. I'm pretty sure it's a county issue because actually the county commissioners voted on this actually. So yeah, it's a county issue. But we have like local baseball and softball fields, right, where people can go out there and practice. It's in the city, right? Last year they just raised the cost. I believe it is like I think it's $200 per child a month to go practice on those fields whenever they like. But
wow.
the thing is, though, is with our youth, and you should, I would think this would touch you because you're big on the youth. You're kind of running. That's kind of what you're running based off of.
Yeah.
Our youth in Columbia County over here, like I think it's like 30% of them are obese. And how can we get them to be physically in shape if we're constantly raising these prices to be able, get them outside to go play sports, go get fit, be in shape? And especially for one, our PE in our schools, let me tell you, I'm in the Army currently, right? I'm in the Army currently. We just changed our standards, right? Last test for physical fitness test for the Army, it was a walkthrough. You can walk through it. Now it's actually kind of challenging. I'm not saying I'm breaking a sweat by it or anything, but it's a little bit more challenging. Our PE for our high schoolers in schools, the standards are so low. The standards are unbelievably low.
Yeah.
Not only does it affect somebody's physical shape. Yeah, not only does it affect somebody's physical shape, it also affects you mentally. Whenever it mentally affects you whenever your body is not healthy. 100%. We cannot expect our kids to succeed and do good in life if we're not setting them up properly physically.
100%.
It's kind of like cleaning your room, right? If you do not have a clean room, if your room's a mess, Jordan Peterson spoke about this on Joe Rogan. If you have a dirty house, if your house is a mess, your room is a mess, it affects you mentally. It kind of drags you down a little bit, right?
Yeah. Those little details. Yeah.
Yeah. Same thing with the body. Is there anything weird, you plan on doing in Jacksonville to help, I guess, help the children physically, the youth physically, whenever it comes to sports and fitness and whatnot?
Well, we need to, what's going on there to where it's a $200 charge is absolutely ludicrous.
Yeah.
His most ridiculous, one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. I remember being able to go to any park, any field, the walk, go in there and use it as such. And run around and take part in being in the environment and being a kid and being healthy and being active, right? And like you said, we just need to raise the standard. I think that starts at the root too. My father was always like, "Hey, you can't just be cooped up in the house all day." And then I embodied that to where I ran around until the street lights came on. And I earned my stripes and gained some battle wounds that way. You know what I mean? And had some of the best times doing it. We're not really championing that. We're not really taking that on as much anymore. But I believe to raising the standard within our school systems for making these classes an actual class and not something that's just a laughable matter to where it's wasting everybody's time will definitely help that, because it has to start somewhere. If they're not getting it at home, this just like I do, majority when you're in middle school, high school, majority of your day is at school. By the time you get home, it's what, 2, 3 o'clock? You know what I mean? You blink and it's 5, 6 o'clock, and next you're up for the next day, at least during the week. So while they're there, we need to have standards and excellence that follow exactly that's going to transition them into the real world. We don't want their health to be a challenge. We don't want them, they don't know that if they ever wanted to get life insurance and you got diabetes, you got health problems, they're probably going to turn you down. You know what I mean? You that will impede on that. They
Yeah.
don't know that when they don't know the challenges and the things that they can face just because they're not in shape, just because they don't respect themselves and their body. One of the things I always respect is when I know when someone's working out, they're in shape, it comes with great discipline. Just like doing the little things of cleaning your room, it comes with great discipline. When someone has discipline, that can take you a long way, because you're not doing it at that point just because maybe you love it and every day is a great day to do it. You're doing it because you are wired tight to where this is something I'm going to do regardless, just because. Not because I love it all the time, not because, this person said so over here. This is absolutely who I am. And that can take you very, very, very far. So if we keep skipping over the little details like that at the root of it within our youth, then they're going to trip over, fail, collapse over the big things, when they enter the real world, and they just won't be ready for that level of turbulence. So, but I agree with you on that. This is all about leadership raising the bar and not thinking this is ridiculous, because it's not, so.
Yeah. I think it's ridiculous, right? Because I remember, like I said, I remember being back in school.
It is. Yep.
I can tell you this much, actually. With me going to that private school, we had our baseball coach, Mr. Montano. He was different. The other PE coaches, they were soft, right? But Mr.
Right,
Montano,
right.
he used to run us until we threw up if we screwed up a game of baseball.
Okay.
I like him a
That's awesome.
lot, but anyway, so I kind of want to touch like just a little bit more on affordability. Uh, how do
Yes.
like I said it earlier, right? As far as creating small businesses, creating more small businesses to pop off in Jacksonville. You said the city has money, is what you said, to actually do it and
Yes.
support
Yes.
it. Um, but also, if Fishback does get governor, look, I'm not gonna lie. I think he's going to get governor. I don't see him losing. I say that because the people who is voting for Byron Donalds right now, they're like not trying to diss on old people or anything, because I love old people. I love my granddaddy. I love my grandma.
Yeah,
I
I do
love them,
too.
right?
Yeah,
But
for sure. Yeah.
but it's statistically speaking, it's true though that older generation, they just follow whoever Trump endorses. But you have a lot more of the newer generation, though, people my age and your age, who is actually looking in the Fishback. And I saw a poll the other day. I posted it the other day. I think it was from Inactive Polls or something like that. I think it's what it's called. Interactive Poll, I think is what it's called.
Right.
Um, it showed from the state of Florida, it showed from the ages of 18 to 34, James Fishback had 38% of their votes, where Byron Donalds only had 8%.
I'm surprised he has eight.
That
But
me
yeah,
too, me too. But
yeah, yeah,
but those 8%, that's just people who just they're following this. Either they just haven't looked into Fishback, they just haven't heard from him yet.
yeah. Or they might be
Um,
following Grandpap and
that's what I'm
who.
saying. They probably just heard, Dad said, something about Byron Donalds, right? And there's like,
Yeah,
oh, okay, well, he's a Republican. We should vote for him, right? That's probably what
yeah,
it was. But that,
yeah.
that's especially with the position I have now. Like, I'm the county chair for James Fishback over Columbia County. That kind of
There
stuff,
you
though,
go.
it falls on me, though. Like, that is my job to get out there and go tell these younger generation, including older generation. It is my job to
Yeah,
go spread the word on that. And ultimately,
yep.
let me go ahead and tell you this. If Fishback does not win Columbia County on the GOP primary election coming in August, it's going to be my fault, right? It all falls back on me. So I'm,
I love the standard you're setting for yourself, but that's how it needs to be.
yeah, no, it's I'm not trying to put it lightly on myself, right? I truly believe I can get the job done. But
Yeah.
anyways, with that being said, though, uh, as far as small businesses in Jacksonville, you said the city has money. Is there a deficit in Jacksonville right now? Is there a deficit?
No,
Okay, okay.
no,
I didn't think
absolutely not.
so.
Yeah.
Because I believe what the
Not
state
with
of.
this many people. Yeah, we're flourishing.
Okay, okay. So we can actually do things with that then.
Yes.
Um, is there going to be some sort of program you're going to be setting up for it? Or can people just apply through the city, or how does that work?
Yeah, so right now, as myself and my team, we're digging deeper into that, and I think we're looking for more creative ways to how we can keep it within a city level that it's going to, truly be beneficial. But if we have the assistance of a fishback on the state level, it really would make it easier,
Yeah,
right? It would truly, and like you said, you setting the standard for yourself for winning your county. It's almost me setting the standard to help amplify that too, because it goes into direct correlation with everything that I would need to do through getting it passed on that level if I can't do it on the city side of things. But I would like to open up a larger scale, which I would need state level ability to, outside of any means or dollar amount that we can't currently deploy here on the city side, to where we can cater to our tenured and startup small business and be more aggressive with them. If I'm going to take losses, or if I'm going to have setbacks or hiccups, I'm going to do it by pouring into the citizens of our people. You know what I mean? We
yeah,
have so much waste, and we have so much, in my opinion, improper decision making on deployment of money. You might as well just light a match and set it on fire. So if that's the case, I'm going to do it by developing, investing into these small businesses, and showing people that we're here to reward, and we're here to raise the influx of being a small business, bringing stability and giving you an enormous amount of support. But we'll make sure that the criteria and the tolerance of certain things that would negatively impact that is at zero. So as quickly as we're ready to give it to you is as quickly as we'll shut it off if it's not used properly. And that's just how you have to be. But it'd be a different conversation if I felt like the money wasn't there, we're in a deficit, or if it was, the money's there, the
yeah,
city's there. People want to do it. You're right. I drive by after I go to the gym. There's tons of properties open for lease, open for lease. This, that. It shouldn't be like that, but it is, because the lack of leadership involvement, making people feel like they have a support system to where they can actually flourish, and assistance to where we reward and encourage people to do these things. No, what we reward and encourage is people to be at the bare bones, bottom barrel, what they are, and abuse a system that they think isn't in place to actually help them. So you know what? They stop fighting the trend, and they just sit there and idle. or they digress and they get worse. You know what I mean? That's what people do. So that's something that will need to be changed immediately. And it starts with leadership. It starts with a mindset. It starts with pushing a different agenda and a perspective. I mean, we need all of it bad, so bad. So
Yeah. Okay. So with touching on that right there, what's your thoughts on kind of like a grandfather system, right? And what I mean by that is like what if somebody was to move to Jacksonville and only be a resident in Duval County for like a month, right? Would they still have that kind of same opportunity, or will there be like a limit for how long you have to live in Jacksonville?
yeah, you have to have stability. You can't just, transition here last week and, kind of go back and forth or live in Georgia because we're right off the border of Georgia and then just drive to Jacksonville and start a business over here because it's easier. We're going to have criteria that needs to be met. And I think Fishback would agree with that
Yeah.
on a state level that there needs to be certain criteria, needs to be a certain duration of time of how long you lived within the city. I think a year, somewhere along that. I think if you lived within a year, maybe a little bit less, but I think minimum that in its length at its highest. And then, whatever else we'd like to implement to where we show some stability and tenure. And you don't have business for a year, but let's say you moved to Jacksonville, you've been here for 2 years, right? And you've been wanting to start something up. You just, you haven't felt adequate enough due to things outside of your circumstance to help you do so. These are individuals who also will take in consideration. We want to help the citizens and people that live here, have families here. They're raising kids here. They're going through their life here in Jacksonville. So
Yeah.
we don't want what people with the state of Florida is abuse it on a capital aspect, just as an investment. Our snowbirds, buying up properties, businesses, living in Montana. Same thing that we do. I see it in my business all the time. People get a home in Montana not because they like Montana, it's because there's no taxes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they buy a car and they pay nothing. You know what they've done with that the last 10 years? They've squeezed that system, right? Until Montana was like, whoa, you can't just jump over here tomorrow, start up an LLC, get you like a little dirt residency and be like, I'm going to take advantage of this. They've tightened up on it. You know what I mean? And it's the only thing that makes sense, right? So we would have those same criteria to where it's not being abused. So.
Yeah. Okay. So getting into the taxes of things, this is something I want to touch on. As mayor, how much authority do you have over taxes in Jacksonville? Is it like pretty lenient, or are you able to pull I guess you say lower income tax, for example, right? Because with me, one thing one thing about me is I'm not a very big supporter in income tax. I believe what you work for
Yeah,
is what you earn, and what you work for is what you earn, right?
yeah, yeah,
I'm also the same with property taxes. I believe, what you own, whenever you go to buy land, you're essentially just renting from the government. You don't actually own it.
yeah.
Um, so
Right. Well, because there's a continuation of a fee.
yeah,
If you weren't paying something, because what's the point of paying cash for something if there's always an accruement? You call it like a curtailment. It's the continuation of a fee every single time. Like, do you really own it then? It's like if you go finance a car, you think you own it, but no, you don't. The lien holder owns it until you pay it off. You
yeah.
pay them a payment. You know what I mean? So you don't own it. So after you pay them off, and then I'm like, okay, great. Now you still have to pay me this $1,000 a month for forever. What do we really own then?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's finding ways on.
We're a
Yeah,
slave to the system, essentially. Uh, is there
yeah,
anything you can do though as mayor to like let's say I don't agree with income taxes. I don't know your stance on this. I've never
mhm,
talked to you about
mhm,
really taxes before. Is there
mhm,
something you
mhm.
can do as mayor to kind of mitigate that stuff? Because obviously, we can't just eliminate every single tax out there, right? Because that's how our cities and our states make
No,
money, right? Like as much as anti-tax as
correct.
I am, it's kind of like doing your laundry. You may hate doing your laundry, but you have to do it, right? You have to do it to,
Yeah, for
continue
sure.
living. That's how taxes are
Yeah,
with the city. But there are
yeah,
certainly taxes though that could be eliminated. That's just kind of, it's ridiculous. Property tax
yeah,
being one of them. It's just
yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah,
Things
yeah.
like,
And I know
things
they
like,
pushed something through, or DeSantis was trying to push something through for property tax,
yeah.
if I'm not mistaken, not too long ago.
Hmm.
So these are things that I know we want to champion and echo from, just continue to piggyback from, what's already happening in Florida, which is also going to be a reason why more people are going to want to move here and be here. With things like that happen. But a lot of it's on the state level. A lot of it's on the state level. I think when it comes to those greater the greater implementation of being able to stop, add when it comes to taxes. So Fishback's going to, as we speak it, Fishback's going to have a big say so when it comes to that. You got the dog.
Yeah, she was kind of like like clawing at me right here, and I was like kind of trying to
Don't
push her
worry.
off of me. Uh, I'm gonna let her out my room. Like, give me two
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
seconds.
yeah,
Just give me
yeah, yeah.
two
No, no, no.
seconds.
Of course. No, you got it.
Come on, Tootsie. Come on, girl. Come on. Hey, Bree, take care of Tootsie. All right, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Yeah, she was just kind of like jumping at me, clawing at me, want me to hold her and stuff, and I throw her out my room. But anyways, on a serious note here, um, like I was saying, taxes is just something that exists. It has to be done, right? Otherwise, we can't afford to
Yeah.
fund our cities. Do you plan on getting rid of any sort of tax in Jacksonville? Like, do you plan on pushing for something like that?
Um, I, I would say wearing my business hat. If I had a budget in front of me, I could strategically answer that a little bit better. But I would say at the heart of it and the core of who I am, I want to help alleviate as much as possible for the citizens of Jacksonville to where it's at their benefit to be able to flourish, live easier, and go about their day-to-day lives that right now impact them in a better way. But I also, like, we know, understand that if you open up a business, there is a form of a profit that needs to be accrued to some degree, what we will call a fair profit, so that you can be sustainable, so that you could be healthy, and so that you can take part and take care of your customers, not just today but in the future. And I think the same thing goes for a city standpoint and on state level. So like you said, capitalism, profit, it's what we want, but we want to make sure that if we're in a position like Florida, like I said, has $15 billion in reserve, but we're dishing out 300, $400 million here and there, right? If we're doing that, might as well set the money on fire or pour it into our people and help, alleviate the turbulence that they have going on, that they feel every single day. So looking at it, to answer your question as a whole, I definitely will be looking at everything on a tax standpoint too. I'm not saying that I will never not do anything for taxes when it comes to reducing or what's within my ability, but I'm saying is that I'm going to look at the full spectrum to where is a proper balance, to where it helps the citizens of Jacksonville but still allows us to flourish as a city, so that we can continue to help the things that are in dire need also, that they are also going to be impacted by too, so.
Yeah, it's definitely not good to, eliminate taxes and then see, 5 years down the line we're going to be in a deficit, right? That's
Yeah,
not a good thing to
it
have.
doesn't help anybody.
There is there is a happy median between there, right? But with all that being said, before we go ahead and wrap this up, is there anything you want the audience to know?
Man, well, first and foremost, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for just taking time out of your day to sit down with me. I truly believe that within the next, for me, 12 and a half months, that you're going to see something electric, something refreshing, an individual that's going to be have the amazing bandwidth to touch as much youth, small businesses as possible, to bring immediate change and a different level of urgency and excellence within the city, and to grow and work on Fishback on the state level, in the same direction, and that's why I love that we're formulating a relationship now, and I formulated a relationship with Fishback, and we're all being direct reflections within each other, within our space, for the ultimate goal, which I believe we all have. So that I want to give you your flowers on that and say thank you, and when I get on those big stages, man, you'll still continue to get your flowers for what we do now. What happens now is the reason why, the greater thing happen on later. Just the people don't see the beginning stages. They just see what transpires at the end. So, but outside of that, I just want to say, my name's Glenvin Owen Jr. I am an individual that is no politician. But if you're looking for someone, right, that has a refreshing approach, has approach for all the individuals that care about their day-to-day lives for all people, right, and especially our youth, right, and truly bringing a certain level of value at its highest for our youth and our small businesses, and preserving the things that are truly important, especially within our city and our great state. Look at me for what I represent based on who I am and my standards and my character. And I think you'll be thoroughly impressed to know that when you go to sleep at night and your kids are going to school and your family is looking to grow and be the best that they can be in all aspects, you have someone that's going to have your best interest, not for a dollar, but as important, like I said, is as my next breath, it would be for me to serve the community of Jacksonville. So I appreciate you, man.
All right, no problem. Thank you for letting me have you on here. This is definitely the biggest, video I've ever done on this channel. Well,
Awesome.
thank you for letting me have you, and have a good day.